Welcome back to the Top 1% Book Club. You know how this works? We take these awesome self-help books and we really pull out the stuff that you can use to make your life better.
Yeah.
So today we're tackling Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning.
Oh, good one.
Right. And we're going to see if we can unlock the secret to finding purpose even when things get really, really tough.
Yeah, it's a heavy topic.
It is. When you think about a book about concentration camps for self-improvement.
Right, exactly.
But Frankl's take on resilience and hope, I think those are things that everyone can relate to, no matter what you're going through.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Because he's not just talking about, surviving. He's talking about thriving, really living a meaningful life.
Exactly. And to get us there, we've got a bunch of different resources we're going to pull from. We've got excerpts from the book itself, obviously.
Of course.
But also, we've got these two really insightful blog posts. One by Benjamin McAvoy.
Oh, I read that one. It was good.
So good. And another one by Tyler DeVries.
Yeah.
Both really smart guys with interesting takes on Frankl.
Yeah.
And then we've got this really cool animated summary from YouTube.
I love those. Visual learner over here.
Right. They do such a good job of breaking down complex ideas. This one's called The Journey.
Okay.
So we'll bounce back and forth between these different sources to really get a multi-dimensional understanding of Frankl's message.
Love it.
So to set the scene a little bit, Frankl was a psychiatrist, and he spent 3 years in Nazi concentration camps.
Yeah, like Auschwitz. Right.
Yeah. Torture, starvation, forced labor, just awful, awful conditions.
Like the ultimate test of the human spirit.
Absolutely. And the YouTube video, The Journey, it really drives home the point that he wasn't just writing about this stuff, he was living it.
Right, yeah. He was in the thick of it.
And I think that's what makes his insights so powerful.
Totally. It's not theoretical, it's real.
Exactly. One thing that really stuck with me from McAvoy's blog post was how he describes the feeling of arriving at Auschwitz. Just imagine they stripped them of everything.
Everything. Wow.
Everything. Possessions, their names, even their hair.
It's like they wanted to completely erase them, dehumanize them.
Right. It was this brutal forced letting go of the past. And McAvoy talks about how Frankl saw his life's work, this manuscript he had been working on about logotherapy.
Logotherapy.
Yeah, we'll get to that later. But it was literally burned, up in flames.
Oh.
Gone. It was like this stark confrontation with the present moment.
Everything just ripped away.
Yeah. And so you have to wonder, how do you find hope in a situation like that when everything is taken from you?
Right. Where do you even begin?
Well, one thing Frankl observed in the camps was this phenomenon he called delusion of reprieve. Both DeVries and the audiobook go into this. Delusion of reprieve. That sounds almost contradictory.
It does, doesn't it? But basically, it's this idea that even when facing imminent death, people would cling to hope.
Even at the very last moment, they'd believe they might be spared.
Exactly. And Frankl saw this as a testament to just how resilient the human mind can be, this inherent desire to survive.
Wow. So even in the darkest moments, our minds can find a way to cling to hope.
It's like a survival mechanism, right? A way of protecting ourselves from utter despair.
It makes you think, though, if it's not just survival, then what is it that truly drives us?
Well, that's where Frankl's concept of the will to meaning comes in.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, so DeVries and the audiobook both explain how Frankl believed that our primary drive is not pleasure, like Freud thought,
right,
or power, like Adler argued, but a will to meaning. We're hardwired to seek meaning in our lives. And without it, we fall into what he called an existential vacuum.
Existential vacuum.
That sounds intense. It is. It's basically the state of emptiness and meaninglessness, where you feel lost and aimless, nothing really matters.
Yeah, okay. I've definitely felt that way sometimes.
I think we all have. And Frankl believed that this existential vacuum is actually a big problem in modern society, and that it can lead to boredom, depression, even addiction.
We try to fill that void with all sorts of distractions and quick fixes, but what we really need is meaning.
Exactly. And that's really the heart of Frankl's message, that we need a why to live for, a purpose that drives us, that gets us out of bed in the morning.
Right. It's not just about getting through tough times. It's about thriving in the face of them and having that reason to keep going.
That's it. And Frankl actually goes on to outline 3 specific ways we can find meaning in our lives.
I'm all ears.
McAvoy sums them up really well in his post. Meaningful work, love, and finding meaning in suffering.
Okay, so let's start with meaningful work. What does that actually look like? Because I think a lot of people struggle with finding fulfillment in their jobs.
Yeah, and remember, Frankel's not just talking about your 9 to 5. It's about anything where you're creating something, contributing to something larger than yourself, using your talents. It could be volunteering, a creative pursuit, how you raise your kids, anything.
Yeah, yeah, like even just how you approach your daily tasks, right?
Exactly. And it's about finding a sense of purpose in what you do, no matter how small. The animated video, The Journey, actually gives this great example about finding happiness in collecting bottles as a kid.
Really?
Yeah. It wasn't about the task itself, but the meaning he attached to it. Like he was feeding himself and his family.
Mm.
That gave it purpose.
That's so cool. So it's not about finding a new job or hobby necessarily,
Yeah.
but about looking at what you're already doing through a different lens.
You got it. It's about aligning your actions with your values, with your why. And that brings us to the second path, love.
Okay, love.
Yeah.
That seems a bit more straightforward. But I'm curious to hear how Frankl ties that into meaning.
Well, think back to his experience in the camps. He was separated from his wife, but the memory of their love, that's what sustained him.
Wow, really?
Yeah, McAvoy actually calls it the salvation of man.
Powerful stuff. I mean, it's amazing how love can give us that kind of strength and resilience, even in the darkest of times.
Right. It's a testament to how powerful our relationships are is shaping our sense of purpose. And I think it's important to remember that it doesn't have to be romantic love.
No? All
It
right.
can be the love you share with your family, friends, even your community.
That's true. So
Yeah.
how do we translate that into action? Like, what does it mean to find meaning through love?
It's about being present in your relationships,
Okay.
really seeing and appreciating the people in your life, nurturing those connections, supporting each other's growth, just like deepening those bonds and expressing that love more fully.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So be present, be appreciative, and let those relationships be a source of strength and meaning.
Exactly. Now, this brings us to the third path, and maybe the most challenging one, finding meaning in suffering.
Okay, I knew this one was coming. But honestly, I'm still kind of struggling with it.
Yeah, it's definitely a head scratcher.
How can we find meaning in something that's inherently painful, something we instinctively try to avoid?
It's a paradox for sure. And it's important to remember that Frankl wasn't saying we should seek out suffering or that it's inherently good.
Right.
He went through hell in those camps. But he recognized that suffering is just. It's part of life. We can't escape it entirely.
Yeah, that's true.
So the question becomes, how do we respond to it? What do we choose to make of it?
That's a great question.
And that's where the real challenge lies.
Like, how do we shift our mindset from why me to what now?
It's tough.
It is. But there have to be ways, right? Like practical things we can do to find meaning in those difficult moments.
Yeah, for sure. And we're going to dive deeper into some of those specific strategies in the next part of our deep dive.
You're killing me. But okay, I guess we have to take a break. This is all pretty heavy stuff.
It is. We've covered a lot of ground. But trust me, it's worth sticking with it. Frankl's insights are incredibly powerful, and I think they have the potential to change the way we view not just suffering, but life itself.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's take a break, and then we'll come back and explore those practical strategies for finding meaning in the everyday.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, I think I'm ready to dive back in. We were talking about how to find meaning in suffering.
Yeah, definitely a tough one, right?
It is. Like, where do you even begin to make sense of that?
Well, I think it helps to understand that Frankl wasn't saying suffering is good or we should seek it out, but he did believe we can find meaning in it.
Right, so it's not about glorifying the suffering.
Exactly. It's about our response to it, like how we choose to deal with those tough times.
Okay, that makes sense. But how? How do we actually do that?
Frankl believed we have this, like, inner freedom. Even in the worst situations, we can choose our attitude.
So even when it feels like everything's out of our control, there's still a part of us that's free.
Exactly. He called it the last of human freedoms. And it's that freedom that allows us to find meaning, even in the midst of suffering.
That's powerful. So it's about recognizing that we have a choice in how we react to things.
Right. And then using that choice to find meaning, Frankl actually developed a whole therapeutic approach based on this idea.
Oh, yeah. Logotherapy.
Yes. Logotherapy. It focuses on helping people find meaning in their lives, and it's based on the idea that we're all driven by this will to meaning.
I think that's something everyone can relate to. Like, we all want our lives to have meaning.
Absolutely. And logotherapy provides some tools and techniques to help us find that meaning.
Like, what kind of tools are we talking about?
Well, we already talked about paradoxical intention a bit, where you actually try to make your fear happen.
Yeah, that one was a mind bender.
It is. But it can be super effective for things like phobias and anxieties.
So by facing our fears head on. we can actually overcome them.
Exactly. It's like by taking away the fear's power, we free ourselves from it.
I love that. What other techniques did he use?
There's also something called dereflection. It's about shifting your focus away from your problems and towards something more meaningful.
So like, instead of dwelling on the negative stuff, you focus on something positive and productive.
Yes, exactly. It's about finding something outside yourself to pour your energy into, something that gives you a sense of purpose.
I like that. So focusing on things we're passionate about, helping others, making a difference in the world.
It's about contributing to something bigger than yourself, and in doing so, finding meaning and purpose.
That's really cool. And it seems like it could apply to so many different areas of life.
It does. Frankl believed that the search for meaning is essential for human well-being. Without it, we risk falling into that existential vacuum we talked about.
Oh, yeah, that emptiness and meaninglessness. I definitely don't want to go there.
Right. It's not a fun place to be. And Frankl believed that a lot of the problems we see in society today, like depression and anxiety, are rooted in this lack of meaning.
So by actively seeking meaning in our lives, we can actually prevent some of those problems.
Exactly. It's about proactively creating a life that feels fulfilling and purposeful. And this brings us back to those 3 paths Frankl talked about.
Meaningful work, love, and finding meaning in suffering.
You got it. And we already talked about meaningful work and love, so let's dive a bit deeper into that 3rd path, finding meaning in suffering.
Okay, this is the one I'm still trying to wrap my head around. Like, how can something that's painful be meaningful?
I know, it's a tough one. And again, it's not about wanting to suffer or saying that pain is a good thing.
Right.
But it's recognizing that suffering is a part of life. It's unavoidable. So the question is, how do we respond to it?
Yeah, that's the key.
Like, can we find a way to grow from our struggles? Can we
Yeah.
use those difficult experiences to become stronger and wiser?
De Vries actually quotes Nietzsche in his blog post, "That which does not kill us makes us stronger."
Exactly. And Frankl takes that idea a step further. He says it's not just about becoming stronger, but about finding meaning in those experiences, about using them as a catalyst for growth and transformation.
I like that, turning those tough times into something positive.
Right. And it all comes back to that power of choice. Even in the midst of suffering, we can choose our attitude.
So we're not just victims of our circumstances, we have agency.
Exactly. We have the power to create meaning even when things are really tough. And that's incredibly empowering.
I love that. It gives us a sense of control even when everything feels chaotic.
Right. And with that control comes responsibility. Frankl believed that true freedom was meaningless without responsibility.
So it's not just about doing whatever we want, but about recognizing that our choices have consequences.
Exactly. And those consequences can impact not just ourselves, but the people around us and even the world at large.
That's deep. So it's about making choices that align with our values, with our purpose.
Yes. And Frankl even believed that we each have a unique mission in life, a calling to fulfill. And that calling often involves contributing to something bigger than ourselves.
That's a beautiful idea, like we all have something special to offer the world.
It's a powerful concept, right? And it ties into this idea of super meaning, as Frankl called it, this recognition that there's a larger purpose to life, even if we can't always understand it.
Wow, so it's okay to embrace the mystery of it all? To acknowledge that there are things we may never fully understand?
It's about having faith that there's a greater plan, even when we can't see it.
That's both humbling and inspiring.
It is, isn't it? It gives us this sense of hope and purpose, even in the face of uncertainty.
You know, this whole conversation has been such a mind shift for me. Like, I'm starting to see the world through a whole new lens.
It's a powerful lens, isn't it? One that focuses on meaning and purpose. I think that's what Frankl's work is all about. It's about helping us find that deeper meaning, that sense of purpose, even in the midst of life's challenges.
All right, I need a minute to process all of this. This is some heavy stuff.
It is, but it's good stuff, right? It's the kind of stuff that can change your life.
Okay, I'm ready for more. Let's take a moment to let these ideas sink in and then talk about how we can actually apply them to our lives.
That's a great idea. Let's take a short pause and then come back and explore some practical ways to find meaning in our everyday lives.
Okay, so we've talked about the theory, the big ideas from Frankl's man's search for meaning. Now, for the part I'm really excited about, how do we actually put this stuff into practice?
Right, like how do we take those powerful insights and apply them to our own lives?
Exactly. Especially if we're not, facing extreme circumstances like a concentration camp.
Yeah, good point. But I think Frankl's message is universal. It's about finding meaning in the everyday, no matter what challenges you're facing.
Okay, so where do we even start? Give me some practical tips, some action steps.
Well, remember those three paths to meaning that Frankl talks about?
Meaningful work, love, and finding meaning in suffering.
You got it. Let's break each one down and see how we can actually live them out.
Let's do it. Starting with meaningful work.
Okay, so meaningful work, it's not just about your job, right? It's about any activity where you're creating, contributing, using your skills and talents to make a difference.
Right, could be volunteering, a creative project, even how you approach raising your kids.
Absolutely. And I think it starts with asking yourself some key questions. What are you good at? What do you enjoy? Where can you make a difference?
Yeah. And how can you even bring more intention and purpose to those everyday tasks, the thing you might not necessarily be passionate about?
Exactly. It's about finding a way to align your actions with your values, with your why. Like even that animated summary we talked about, the journey.
The one about the kid collecting bottles.
Yeah. He found a sense of purpose in that, even though it was out of necessity. It was about providing for himself and his family.
That's a great reminder that meaning can be found anywhere if you look for it. Okay, what about love? That seems a bit more straightforward.
It does, but it's still so important. Remember, Frankl was separated from his wife in the camps, but the memory of their love sustained him.
McAvoy even called it the salvation of man. It's incredible how love can be such a powerful force for good.
And it doesn't have to be romantic love, right? It can be the love you share with family, friends, your community.
So how do we put that into action? What does it actually mean to find meaning through love?
It's about being present in your relationships, really seeing and appreciating the people in your life, nurturing those connections, supporting each other's growth, just like really deepening those bonds and expressing that love more fully.
Be present, be appreciative, make those connections a source of strength and meaning. Got it. Okay, now for the big one, finding meaning in suffering. This one's still throwing me for a loop.
Yeah, it's definitely a head scratcher, but I think it starts with accepting that suffering is just a part of life. We can't escape it entirely.
Yeah, that's true. But how do we actually make sense of it?
Yeah.
How do we shift from that why me mentality to something more, I don't know, empowering?
It's tough. But I think one way is to remember that we always have a choice in how we respond.
Right, that last of human freedoms that Frankl talked about.
Exactly. And we can use that freedom to find meaning, even in the midst of pain.
So it's about finding a way to grow from those challenges, to turn them into something positive, even transformative.
Right. And there are actually some specific techniques we can use to help us do that. We talked about paradoxical intention.
Where you intentionally try to make your fear happen.
Yeah, that one. But there's also de-reflection, where you shift your focus away from your problems and towards something more meaningful.
Okay, I like that. So like focusing on a project you're passionate about or helping someone in need.
Exactly. It's about finding something outside yourself to pour your energy into, something that gives you a sense of purpose.
It's like Frankl's idea of self-transcendence, right? Where you shift from a self-centered perspective to one that's more outward-focused, more focused on meaning and purpose beyond your own needs and desires.
You got it. And that's where I think we find some of the deepest meaning and fulfillment, by connecting with something larger than ourselves.
This has been such a powerful conversation. Frankl's work is so profound.
It really is. He took such a dark experience and turned it into this message of hope and resilience.
And I think the key takeaway here is that we all have the power to choose meaning, even when things are tough.
We have agency. We're not just victims of our circumstances. We can create meaning even in the face of suffering.
So powerful. What a great way to wrap up our deep dive into man's search for meaning.
Absolutely. It's been an honor exploring this book with you.
And with all of you listening, we hope you found this exploration as insightful and inspiring as we have.
We encourage you to keep exploring these ideas, to keep searching for meaning in your own lives.
Because the search for meaning, that's a journey we're all on together. Thanks for joining us.
See you next time.